Welcome back to another episode of Slamtown. Of course, I'm Mike Ginn. That is Dan Bakley. We are here live on the Fighters First Network, fightersfirst.shop. Get all the fresh merch. Look below. You got the new Slamtown merchandise, brand new in the shop. So make sure you go and cop that, support the show. But we're going to jump right into this episode. We don't want everything to be kind of dragging out every episode like we did the first episode. We had a lot to talk about. We were excited about a brand new show. But now, this is the second episode, Dan. We're ready to go. You excited?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to go week to week, just talking wrestling. You know, this is what I do day to day. So,
question.
Yeah.
This week, all the blame goes to Dan. So make sure you leave the comments, like, and subscribe. Anything you love or hate, this one's on him. The question Dan had for this week is based on New Japan, right? New Japan, obviously, their big thing is the G1 Climax. Just one of their biggest events every single year. The junior G1, the regular G1, with all the influx of talent that they have coming over to the United States, whether it's talent agreements with AEW, obviously, a lot of their talent has come over for that throughout the time period. They've also had talent going into Impact. They've also had talent going over to Ring of Honor and their New Japan US shows. And with all that going on, are they kind of taken away from their G1 Climax? And is that talent going to be available? And, of course, we're also dealing with this all in a global pandemic at the same time with travel restrictions. Dan, what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Before I give my thoughts, I just want to point out, like, this is probably a subject for more of the wrestling enthusiasts, because if you don't know, of course, New Japan.
Listen up, Marks.
New Japan Pro Wrestling is like the WWE of Japan. It's huge around there. The WrestleMania is called the Wrestle Kingdom, and it's taking place basically right around New Year's. Literally, it used to be one day, and now they turned it into a 3-day fair because it's so huge at the Tokyo Dome. But for me, this is a crazy.
And of course, founded by Antonio Inoki and the legendary Icon. Yeah, go ahead.
But they've had wrestlers that have broken off and have gone to WWE, gone to AEW, gone to Impact, and have gone there. They signed elsewhere. And I think the big thing with that is New Japan has usually only focused on Japan. That's been their big audience. And they've homegrown the G1 Climax there, where it's become a huge event that's lasted for over a month. If you don't know the New Japan style, they usually have like what it's called a tour, where for a month they do shows almost every day, and then it's culminated into a pay-per-view basically. And this is a pay-per-view that lasts over a month, and where you have 10 guys in block A, 10 guys in block B, and you wrestle every guy in your block. And then the two guys on each block that had the most points face each other, and the winner gets a guaranteed title shot at Wrestle Kingdom in the main event. So it's like a big deal there. But like you said, this year there's been a lot of the Forbidden Door going on, but now something that New Japan has brought to us in the past year has been New Japan Strong, which is basically they have a dojo in Japan, and now they have a dojo in LA. And basically what happens is they strip a wrestler that comes into the dojo to just their wrestling shorts, and they reteach them everything the New Japan way of wrestling. And you basically are just a jobber for basically a year or two until they feel like you're ready to graduate to a wrestler status, veterans wise, and then you can earn your gimmick, earn your new gear, and wrestling
very old school mentality.
Yeah, very old school mentality. And I think what they're trying to do is integrate the United States into their viewership, because the United States doesn't have that big of a viewership of it, and they've only started to with the New Japan World app. And
kind of like similar to what they did back in the 90s with WCW.
Yeah,
just having those talent exchanges. Yeah.
And
then obviously
at
the US show they have too. They have the New Japan US show.
But at first I was like, this is a bad idea because they're doing it at the wrong time, because it's around the G1 Climax. that they showed the entries in the Climax, and there's some notable names, but then there's a lot of names missing, and they've had to pull from tag teams to put into the Climax because a lot of guys are over here. But then the more I realize, you see the talent that is over here now, guys like Will Ospreay, you got Jay White.
I was about to say Switchblade Jay White. Yeah, he's right in
He's
Impact right
big.
now.
TJP has been floating in between the two of
Juice
them.
Robinson and David Finlay.
Robson, Finley. They pulled a bunch of guys from the junior division in Japan over here now, like Robbie Eagles. You got El Phantasmo. And I think the risk is worth the reward right now for the fact that if they can pull a lot of this viewership with what they're calling their USA tour right now for the next couple months, it's going to hit a more demographic of people than just Japan. They're going to be able to hit the U.S. market, which is a crucial market in wrestling because you got people from all over the United States that watch wrestling.
It's all about the money.
Yeah, and they can make a lot of money doing that and create new partnerships with it. And yes, it's hurting their biggest draw of the year from a Japan standpoint. But when you look at the world aspect of it, they're gaining more than they're losing. And I want to get your opinion on this.
So this isn't new. Like, this isn't new. We're older. I'm 44. Dan's in his 30s. We've been through this. WCW did this famously in the 90s. Even the late 80s when the Great Muta first started coming over. Jushin Thunder Liger. Yeah. Later in the 90s with NWO and the crossover with Masahiro Chono and that whole crew. That might have been Suzuki. Like, that might have been the peak financially successful time for Antonio Inoki's promotion. You had competition from like All Japan and Noah and some of these other ones in Japan. And they were the first ones to really open that forbidden door and send their talent over to the NWA and WCW to expose people to their product. I'll go back in time a little bit. So me and my best friend growing up, our favorite wrestling video game was the New Japan Pro Wrestling games. The first and second one arguably set the tone for the entire legacy of wrestling games we have today, all the way up to WWE 2K series. The move sets, the controls were different than any other wrestling game that ever been. Before that, you had WWF games that were similar to like either kind of cartoonish or like a Mortal Kombat type style, like gameplay with like the system, right? Yeah. The New Japan system that they used in those games, and you had to have an illegally modded PlayStation and everything else. We went to this place, it's called Starland back in Northern Virginia. And they would put these mod chips in their PlayStation so we could play these games from Japan. And we really didn't understand much of the menu. We had to like sit there and like try to figure out which options was this to play which match and whatever. And once we figured it out, it was what it was. Man, that opened up an entire fan base. You had people in America who didn't really know their product, buying their product, shipping it over to America, paying the taxes, paying the tariffs, all the other stuff, getting it to America because it was a hot product. And then you go look on TV and you'd see some of these guys wrestling known stars, like Sting and Great Muta, right? Like known stars. So what they're doing today is not new, but it is proven to be successful. And with the impact that New Japan has had over the decades of being pretty much the only promotion left standing, there's still other promotions and stuff, but not nearly as successful as New Japan. All Japan's gone. Like all this stuff when Great Baba like passed away, like all that stuff's gone. They're the only ones left standing. And even if Inoki ever, passes, that whole family passes the torch to somebody else, I don't think New Japan's ever going anywhere.
No.
So the Forbidden Door is not new. I think it's a very successful thing. I think if you're missing a Will Ospreay, you're missing a Jay White, maybe a Kenny Omega's a little bit busy now, like going to AAA and going to whatever. He's not going to be able to come back. But what you're not thinking about is that Forbidden Door goes both ways. One of the reasons why we talked on last episode,
I was going to just bring that in.
Yeah, Bryan Danielson signed with AEW. WWE was going to let him do it too, but he mainly signed with AEW because he can do what he wants to do. He can go to AAA, he can go to New Japan, which he really wants to do. So I don't know how it affects this climax, but in future climaxes, especially when the pandemic kind of eases up a little bit, we hope, we pray, all those travel restrictions start going away. I think this opens the door for a future for New Japan that wasn't there before, that they may have been on life support trying to do these different projects, bringing it to the United States because they needed the influx of money and marketing. Marketing is the big thing in wrestling, right? When you think of New Japan, unfortunately, the number one thing you think of is a lot of the Americans. We just talked about this with AEW last week. The WWE coming in. Well, what you think about New Japan is a lot of times is the Americans that go over to reestablish themselves. Chris Jericho after he left WWE before AEW. Back in the, or you know what, we just talked about it. Juice Robinson, he's basically a jobber in NXT.
Yeah,
like he had a couple of little successful runs, but he was mostly a jobber. He went over and became a legitimate United States champion over in New Japan. David Finlay, obviously, probably more known for his dad than himself, legitimate star over there. The Bullet Club, famously, the Young Bucks. AJ Styles left TNA, went over there, achieved a monumental success. And then names that came over before this.
Brock Lesnar.
Brock Lesnar's another guy.
Kurt Angle was there.
Back in the day, the Road Warriors, the Steiner brothers. You remember a guy named Scott Norton? Remember him?
Yeah, Hogan.
But it also made people that weren't really stars into stars. The Gary Albrights, Dr. Death, Steve Williams. These guys that didn't really get over with the U.S. crowd early on, or just wasn't known because they were in like regional promotions like the USWA and stuff, they went over there and became global stars. So whenever they came back to the United States, they were guaranteed big paychecks because they made their name in New Japan. So what's happening today with a Will Ospreay, a Jay White, I think what they're doing, and we haven't seen Ospreay pop up, but I'm pretty sure it's only a matter of time until he gets like 100% healthy and is popping up in one of these promotions. Even veterans like Minoru Suzuki and stuff like that. Lance Archer, who's come over. Dean Ambrose has been going back and forth the whole time. John Moxley. Sorry, the WWE.
That's one thing I was going to bring up there, that I think it's kind of a happy accident because of the whole COVID situation. Instead of bringing wrestlers to them, now they're kind of bringing their New Japan wrestlers to the other companies. And they're using that LA Dojo fan base as like a home base for their talent. And they're bringing in, like a month or two ago, they brought in to New Japan Strong Josh Alexander, who's going to be wrestling in the main event of Bound for Glory against Christian Cage. He came over, did a couple matches in New Japan Strong. They brought the Good Brothers into their tag team tournament that they had on Strong. They're bringing in Ospreay, of course he's over here, but they're bringing in guys from AEW and Impact to compete on the New Japan thing. Chris Bay from Impact, he was on there. They're using it the opposite way than they usually do. Usually, like I said, those guys are coming to Japan, but now they're coming to the US and they're gaining extra viewership because now AEW and Impact are mentioning it, that they're from New Japan. They're getting that TV notoriety from it. And then you got Moxley and Kingston who next weekend who are going to appear on New Japan Strong to wrestle Archer and Suzuki. So that's 3 AEW talents with one New Japan talent in one match.
And they've been doing that too, because if you look back in the day, you know how you know the names Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit. I don't know if we're allowed to say that name anymore, but the reason why we know these names is because they were independent wrestlers in America. Jericho's case, America, Mexico, Canada. Independent wrestlers, and they went over there. They not only learned how to work better from working like that old school style, which, Japan has a lot of spots too, but they also have like a lot of psychology that goes into it. Their crowds are usually eerily silent. Like during the matches, you could hear a pin drop, except like an ooh and an ah once in a while. And when you learn to get that ooh and ah out of that Japanese crowd, you know you made it, right? Because if they break that silence to go, ooh, like you've done something special.
Very
you
respectful.
learn how to work. And for years, Chris Benoit couldn't talk on the mic, but he was one of the best workers you ever saw in the ring. Eddie Guerrero had the whole package. Chris Jericho developed the whole package. He kind of added a little comedy to what he's doing. But especially went to WCW and the man of 1,000, him and Dean Malenko and all the holds, and then the Rey Mysterio mask situation. Dean Malenko's another guy. They've been doing this for a long time. And I agree with you. I think just bringing these guys over now is going to give them more notoriety. It's going to give them more exposure. And in the end, I think New Japan comes out of this stronger, not just like, let's be real. WCW, they came out stronger of the WCW situation, but WCW is the one that benefited the most. They were bringing in the New Japan guys. They were bringing in the Mexican guys, all Conan's guys from AAA and CMLL, and all those. Like, they were just constantly bringing in the talent exchanges. And what they were doing was filling up a 3-hour show, and then on TBS on Saturdays. What AEW is doing is no different. They're bringing in this new talent that people in America may not be familiar with, but it's like an aura. It's like an awe. Like, ooh, they're from Japan. Impact is doing it a different way. They're kind of like making them like, you should already know who these guys are, which I'm not sure is probably the best way, but I keep saying we're going to have we're going to have an episode on Impact one of these days, because they went from competition to WWE, which they were never really competition, but they were a secondary brand, to now being almost like the bottom of the barrel. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. We'll talk about them in another episode. But back to the original question that Dan posed, is this influx hurting the G1 Climax? And I say the answer is no, because the answer is really New Japan develops new stars better than anybody on the planet. If some unknown name, maybe a tag team wrestler, maybe somebody that you've never heard of before wins this, now they're a megastar. And this is an opportunity that New Japan has been taking for decades, not centuries, decades of making new stars. And that's something they do better than anybody in America. This is your subject. I'll let you go rant a little bit more on it, and tell me. Actually, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
One, who do you think is going to win this G1? And two, do you think that person then becomes the bigger star, or will it be like an established star that wins it?
Before I answer that, I just want to get a small point. I think it's going to be for the G1. I think it's going to hurt it a little bit, but it's going to be like the situation of you're going to take a loss to get an even bigger gain in the future. Because obviously,
that's my point.
Yeah. Obviously, you're going to have some of the faces that aren't usually in it now, so it's hurting a little bit. But then, just like you said, I think they're building a star. Well, he's not really getting built, but I think he's going to get even bigger, because who I think is going to win it is Jeff Cobb, who kind of funny in the situation that he is stablemates with Will Ospreay. If anybody doesn't know New Japan, the 4 stables, like their British invasion. Yeah, and the one new one that was just created was the United Empire, and it's kind of spanned over 3 different promotions now, with the wrestlers that are in it. But Jeff Cobb is part of the stable with Will Ospreay, who is putting himself the real world champion. And I think that's going to wind up going.
I still don't understand why he gave his belt up if he was able to come back so quickly. Like, I know he planned to be out way longer, but it's just.
I think that had to be storyline of just to mess with the whole John Moxley thing, where he only wrestled once or twice in that year, knowing that he was the U.S. champion. But back to Jeff Cobb, I think that they're building it. They've been building it for a while with him and Okada rivalry, where of course Okada kept winning the matches, but then this year it all changed once Jeff Cobb joined the United Empire. he's been the most winless wrestler on New Japan this past year. He finally beat Okada before the G1. They're in the same block right now, and they're tied for first. And it just so happens that their last match of the block is going to be against each other. So you know something's going to happen there, but I think they're going to put over, like, they don't need to put over Okada anymore. He's a made man in Japan. He could not win a match in the next 2 years, and he'll be fine. They need to put over a new guy from the U.S. in Jeff Cobb, who has the talent, who has the look, and he can talk now. He's improved on the mic since joining New Japan, and I think that's going to be the pick. I could see him going up against Ibushi, because Ibushi makes the finals every year now. And they're
another guy in that bracket. I think you should keep. There's 2 guys in that bracket you need to keep an eye on in that A block. You got Kenta, which is my personal, like, I hope Kenta wins. He's always one of my favorites.
Yep.
And then also Zack Sabre Jr.
I love Zack. Yeah.
Like, those are 2 guys, because New Japan loves to put over either people that they already know or imports. And don't sleep on either one of those guys. Ibushi probably will be the guy, but Kenta's in that block too, and he's been promised a bunch of things to come back to Japan. So,
and let's not forget, he was Hideo Itami in NXT, and then Zack Sabre Jr. and Ibushi were on the Cruiserweight Classic. They offered them contracts, but they chose to stay in New Japan. Yeah, big, and it's done them wonders doing that. Even if it wasn't at the time the right choice. But I think being able to go to the U.S.
and also don't sleep on Evil over in that same bracket with Kyle.
Yeah, the House of Terror. But you're developing relationships in the U.S., gain more viewers there, and then you're trying to develop a couple of new guys in the G1 Climax, even though it's not as big right now. You're trying to develop talent that way, knowing that half the talent's not in it, so you're able to mess around and see if these new guys can become even bigger in Japan. Just like you said, with a few of the names and Jeff Cobb, it's a calculated risk, but it's worth one taking, because at the end of the road, you're gonna make more money and you're gonna get more viewership by doing it.
Yeah, I mean, if you got. And I'm looking at the list of people that possibly could. But if a Great O'Khan comes out and wins this thing, he's made, right? And I would argue one more thing that we kind of really don't touch on too much. As American fans talking about Japanese product, we don't traditionally watch a lot of it in the past. We haven't anyway, live. Yeah. We don't watch it as it's happening. We read the dirt sheets. We find out and we follow the stories like we're watching it, but we don't really actually watch it. And then we go back, and when it's available to us, a lot of times watch what we knew already happened, right? So when you're talking about making new stars, especially when you're talking about appealing to America for the money purposes and marketing, if Zack goes out and wins it, if Kenta goes out and wins it, that doesn't really appeal too much to the American audience, because we already know who they are. But if an Evil wins it, if a Jeff Cobb wins it, somebody who doesn't have that. Zack has a little bit of a name in America. Obviously, Kenta, with his time in WWE, Hideo Itami, so on and so forth, has a more known name, right? And by the way, that's another forbidden door that we may now be able to finally see. We were talking about AEW last week. Kenta's already been in AEW once.
Yep.
With Moxley. How would you like to see Kenta versus CM Punk in the battle of Go to Sleep? Because CM Punk is already he has already admitted he stole that move from Kenta. He was inspired by it. It's one of his favorite wrestlers. Kenta versus CM Punk. That steals the show. So you're talking about forbidden doors. There is more to achieve than not achieve by doing what they're doing. To go back to the original question, is it ruining the G1 Climax? I don't think so. You have the same great names, Okada, Ibushi. All those names are still in the G1. You just don't have the John Moxleys. You don't have some of the Americans that come over and make it a bigger spectacle than what it is, the Kenny Omegas. And that's not to say some of them, when they do the junior G1 Climax later, can't still do some of these imports. It's all based on travel restrictions and everything we've got right now. But with that forbidden door open, there's just so much more that can be achieved. And we wish, me and Dan are famously, we have our MMA shows on the network every week. How many times do we wish that we could see an AJ McKee versus Max Holloway, or Volkanovski versus Pitbull? Like some of these matchups that we were like, oh my God, or Kayla Harrison versus Cyborg, or any of these other matchups that we wish we could see cross promotion, right? Well, in the wrestling world, money talks more than anything, because obviously it's still a scripted show. We're not naive, breaking kayfabe, but we know. So, that's the biggest problem in wrestling, is like, when you come over, who does the job? Or how can we make both people look good but still get a result? Like, that's usually the writer's problem when you have these forbidden doors open. And a lot of times it's the imports coming in that get over, right? It's usually the home talent that takes the job to promote the other business. And vice versa. They pay the receipts back. Whereas in MMA, it's a real competition, and you don't know who's going to win, and you don't want your person there. Like, oh my God, Scott Coker sends Cyborg to PFL, and she loses, or sends Kayla, or Ray Sefo and Don, they send Kayla over to Bellator and she loses.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you look bad. They don't want that. Whereas when they do it in the wrestling world, you're pretty much guaranteed the person coming in is going to get the win. Or at least, if not that, then whoever's the good guy versus the bad guy, the good guy is usually going to get the win when there's some kind of cross promotion. But Dan, wrap this up. Dan, let me know your final thoughts on the whole thing and put a bow on this whole episode for us.
What I'm hoping comes out of this is the fact that you're going to have, with the working relationships that you make in the U.S., you're going to see more of guys in next year's G1 that wouldn't normally be in it, because you've formed relationships where you got a guy coming over. I want to see a guy like Brian Danielson in it. Maybe if he's not in the G1, he's in the junior tournament that they do.
I fully expect him to Wrestle Kingdom.
Exactly. Maybe, like, I don't think CM Punk's in it, but just see different faces from Impact and AEW, to where you could have 10 and 10. You got 20 guys, half of it, 10 to 12 guys being New Japan, but then have 3 and 3 from AEW and Impact. So you're getting more of a broader talent in there, and it makes it more watchable, because it's going to show vaster styles in the G1 Climax, where you're going to have guys go for a full month and just wrestle their ass off. And it's only going to be good for the product, good for Japan, and good for the US. It's a win-win for everybody.
And one thing just popped in my mind too. You know who would be perfect to show up as a surprise at Wrestle Kingdom or any of these? Is Wyndham Rotunda, aka Bray Wyatt. Because the Japanese culture loves horror.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big deal there, the horror culture in Japan. Their movies are a million times scarier than what we see in the United States. I still remember a movie called The Call, and I remember watching it late night one time in the Japanese version, and like they're on a train, and they get a phone call, and they die, and it was just like the creepiest thing. And then the U.S. version came out of kind of like a similar version of the same movie, and it was just so watered down.
Can you imagine
a character like the Fiend coming out, like in?
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that with Evil?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
talk about like some of these talents that Vince has let go for whatever purposes. They're only helping other promotions.
Yeah,
I don't think Vince is going to get what he wants out of it, whether he was being sadistic with it or not. But ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 2 of Slamtown. Make sure you cop the merch. It's right below. Check out fightersfirst.shop. Check out the Fighters First Network. Subscribe if you haven't already. We have a ton of content coming out right now every week, multiple shows all week long, always something new and fresh and entertaining. So check it out. Tell us what you think of Slamtown. Tell us what you want us to talk about next week. Leave a comment below. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. For Dan Bakley, I'm Mike Ginn. This is Slamtown. And we're out. We'll see you next week.
See you guys.